using an adjustment layer in Photoshop. An adjustment layer is a special layer that acts as a color filter for a single layer or all the layers beneath it. So we're able to adjust color and tone without permanently destroying the pixels. This makes it non-destructive. So the color adjustments are only on the adjustment layer. We do not destroy any pixels of the image. Let's go ahead and create an adjustment layer. So first of all, we have to select the layer that we want to adjust color on. I'll just choose the Sanibel cat. So I have that layer active. Now I have a number of ways that I can actually make an adjustment layer. The quickest is probably in the layer panel itself by going to the very bottom. We have the mask icon that we utilized earlier, and now we're going to create a new fill or adjustment layer. So when I click that, and I apologize because this is going to open up outside of your viewing area, but I see all of my adjustments there. I'll go ahead and just click one. I'll say hue and saturation. So what happens when I do that is that above the current active layer, I get an adjustment layer. I also see now my properties panel open up with the properties of this specific adjustment. Okay, so I can then create my settings and thus create the adjustment layer. So if I go ahead and choose, let's just colorize it, and we'll turn this a little bit less desaturated, and there I have a nice kind of sepia feel. So that's one way that I can create an adjustment layer. A longer method is to go under that layer menu. Remember, everything really dealing with the layers panel can be found under the layer menu. And here I see a new adjustment layer and those same presets or those same options. So if I choose another one, let's just choose brightness contrast this time. You can see that I now get a new layer, and I can choose at this point to clip it. So here is my option. We'll talk about it in a minute, but I can use the previous layer to create a clipping mask if I want. Okay, so here's my brightness contrast. I'll click OK. So here's my new adjustment layer, and then in the properties again, I see the settings for that. The last way that I can create an adjustment layer, if I go back to my original active layer here, under the window menu are all of my panels. And remember that I can see some of them, the ones that have a check mark are the ones that indicate they are currently visible on my desktop right now. We have a panel called Adjustments. If I click on that, actually what pops up is this panel here. I'll drag it out so you can see it a little bit better. It's fairly small, I know, but here we have a bunch of different presets, 16 to be exact, and this is a way that I can just click and apply. So again, if I want to do, let's just do another brightness contrast because I can do multiples, you can see that it now has been applied, and again I see my settings. So with each one of these, I click on the adjustment layer themselves, and inside my properties panel I see the settings for that. So this is my adjustment panel, which is that third way of creating an adjustment layer. To modify an adjustment layer, again I can click and my properties come up. If that is not the case, I can choose to double click on this adjustment, and you want to double click here. Double clicking over here renames it. Okay, this area is reserved for a mask because I can have an adjustment layer plus a mask. We'll look at that in a minute. So here's my adjustments for the hue and saturation, and you can see that I can change this a little bit if I'd like, and then reapply it. So there it is, and it's adjusted. So that's the way that we can modify an adjustment layer. Now the adjustment panel here, like I mentioned, has those 16 presets, and that's what we see when we use those drop-down menus. Note that the layers panel button at the bottom, it's the little circle, that may have different, we have a solid gradient and pattern to start us off. So they are a little bit different as far as options. In the adjustment panel, So I can add these adjustments. We have, like I mentioned, 16 total preset adjustments in here. The top 5, the top row here, those all deal with tonal controls. So we've got brightness and contrast, we have levels, we have curves, we have exposure, and we have vibrance. The next row of 6 presets indicate color controls. So we have hue and saturation, we have color balance, we have black and white, we have a photo filter, we have a channel mixer, and we have a color lookup. The last row has again 5 presets, and these are the creative or advanced controls. So we have invert, we have posterize, we have threshold, selective color, and gradient map. So those are my adjustments. Now, like I mentioned, adjustments are non-destructive, and so I can turn them on and I can turn them off. And here you can see this one is doing quite a bit. We'll turn these other ones off for a moment. You can see that this adjustment is taking some of my color control here with hue and saturation. If I were to put something in the mask, making my mask be active, I'm going to just do something fairly large and simple to see. We'll put a band here. We're going to fill it with black. So I'm going to use my Option or Alt and Delete because that's filling with my foreground color, which happens to be black. So you can see the masked area, Control D to deselect. So in this case now, this adjustment is only being applied where you see the white, the black is masking it. So we can use an adjustment layer with a layer mask. It comes with it. I also can change the blending mode on an adjustment layer. So blending mode depends on how it's going to blend on below, all those pixels below. So you can do some interesting effects here. Some of them are pretty subtle. Now we're starting to get a lot of things happening here. So we not only have an adjustment, a color or tonal adjustment happening, but now we have a blending mode happening and how it's blending with what's below. So we're kind of multiplying the effects here. So you have to be cautious and really understand what's going on, what's happening. To apply an adjustment layer to a single layer, we have some options. So if we position the cursor here between the adjustment layer and the layer below it. So again, if I go something like this, let's turn this on. Actually, let's rearrange, and we can rearrange these, and that does affect the look because it depends on how these are kind of going on down and applying the effect. Now with the hue and saturation here, if I want it to be applied only to this layer, I can actually hold down my Alt or my Option as I would to create a clipping mask. And so now this is being applied only to this layer. Okay, so this would be more noticeable if I have something that's only taking up partial of the layer. Let's go ahead and do something like that. Let me go ahead and embed just a simple graphic here. We'll take the ladybug, we'll place it. Okay, so here's the ladybug. We need to apply it, so it's there. Okay, so even though this is small, let's turn everything else off here. If I wanted to make an adjustment layer and have it be applied only to my ladybug, so let's say the cat is going to stay the same. Okay, let's move this over to the side here. So I'm going to create an adjustment layer that's clipped with this. So we do have a couple ways of doing it. Number one, when I make an adjustment layer, so let's just say I'm going to go back to hue and saturation on this one. And it's going to be applied to everything on down. So if I colorize this, or maybe I don't colorize it. Maybe I do something like this, which keeps the bug. Let's do a bright green ladybug here. So you can see that right now it's applied to everything on down. So this cat over here is also getting that effect. So what I can do is actually select this adjustment layer, which I have it selected, and then click the This Adjustment Affects All Layers Below button on the Properties panel. Here is the This Adjustment Affects All Layers Below. So when that happens, I see that I'm getting this indented, And notice that it's only being applied to this layer, not to everything. My cat changed colors. Now the second method that I can do it is actually how we do a clipping mask or a clipping group, and that's holding down my Alt or my Option. And you can see I can undo and redo. It indents when it's only going to be applied to whatever's right below it. So watch, the ladybug stays the same, but in this case the cat also changes. And if I turn this effect off, you're going to really see it. Okay, can you see how that's changing it? So with it only applying to the ladybug, I'm not applying it to anything else, which controls that color adjustment. So the adjustments layer, definitely better to use than going under Image and Adjustments up here. If I click on my cat and go to Image and choose one of these adjustments, they're the same thing as the adjustment layer offers. These are destructive. These will destroy the pixels. Once you save your document and close it, you're not able to go back to those original pixels. So by using an adjustment layer, we're using a non-destructive technique. We're keeping the original pixels undisturbed.